and walk through a couple things. So yeah, my agency, we basically do conversion rate optimization. We actually do this really cool thing we call CRO maturity assessments, where we use 33 factors to rank the sophistication of like where you are with your growth program, essentially. And then we can benchmark that against like hundreds of other Silicon Valley-based startups. We do customer research, customer journey mapping, and we do like a lot of training on CRO as well. So those are the couple of things that we focus on. So that's kind of where this is coming from. Here's what I want to focus on. CRO is all about the process. It's the team, it's the process, it's like how you communicate, it's how you build workflows, it's how people function within a business to drive growth. So what we're talking about here is the process. Like, what is the process you put in place to like help you drive exponential growth, help accelerate your growth rate? So here's basically where this came from. So I've done this, not only have I worked in the like consulting and like agency side of things for the last 14 years, but I'm a total data nerd. So we track everything, literally everything. And we just have like thousands of pages of notes. It's so nerdy. But what we've done is, from launching CRO inside of growth stage businesses in Silicon Valley, we've done that 155 times. And what we looked at is, in the first 12 months of launching CRO, we analyzed for each client, what were the improvements in their conversion rate? What was their testing velocity? Like, how many tests did they actually get live in that year? What was the validated lift percentage? So like, how many of those tests that they launched actually won and produced like an improvement in performance? And then how did that tie to revenue growth? And we found that we could take all of those businesses and put them in different buckets. So the exponential growth businesses, the businesses that are scaling the fastest, they did these kind of like slight edge principles, tiny things that they did differently than the normal growth rates, which is really interesting, right? So what we wanted to do is we just kept digging into it. And it's like, what are the factors? Like, what are the principles? Like, what is actually like driving this? What is the difference between those like two different marketing or growth teams? So we basically broke it down into these 6 principles. So like, the way to think about this is it's like competencies. It's like, these are the 6 things that you need to focus on to like build the right competencies within a team to help you with scaling. So what we found is like, any of these that were underperforming from like a team perspective, we could see a measurable difference in the results. Like, when we fixed it, we saw the growth rate accelerate, which is super fascinating, right? So the 6 things, I'm just going to kind of touch on them high level. I know you guys will probably have like questions, and I'm totally open book, and we'll work through all that. But basically, the 6 principles are: 1, is everyone strategically aligned? Is the whole exec team on the same page about what your 12-month goals are, what your 90-day KPIs are? You know, do we have silo problems? Is everybody on the same page? Like, those were some of the biggest factors, and that's like the foundation. The second is being customer focused. So because we've run thousands and thousands of experiments like on site, and we've also dealt with hundreds of teams that are running experiments and channels, what we found is that there's like a strong correlation between the closer you get to being customer focused, the more likely you're going to drive winning tests. Which is interesting, right? So not business focused, not product focused, but customer focused. The third is the actual customer research methods. So I don't think in 2022 there's any marketers who are like, I don't want to be customer focused and I don't want to be data driven. I just don't think that's a thing. But putting that in place in a technical, tactical way, there's like specific research methods that like help us get like a better understanding of customers. The fourth is test everything. The fifth is high velocity. So the faster that you can accelerate what you're testing in a channel basis, or adding new channels, or on-site testing, the faster you do that, the more ROI you drive. And then the sixth, this was, I think, one of the most interesting things, is the output of walking through this process with a team over 12 months created like a different dynamic within the startup. So like, the focus on growth, the clarity on goals, the way that teams function and like communicate in their workflows would like improve, and then you'd like see the output of that. So basically, this is, these are the 6 principles, and this is what we like train on. This is what we help clients on. This is also the book that I'm working on that I really need to get finished. and then we had to boil that down. So it's like, these principles are great. You know, it's great that we know what to focus on at kind of the 50,000 foot view, but how do we actually put that into practice? So the other thing we worked on is like, how do teams function, right? Like, what are the things they do? So if these are the principles, that's great. But again, what are they doing on a week-to-week basis and on a quarterly basis, like, to be able to drive digital growth? So a couple things. We broke this down into like 5 phases. So CRO comes down to phase 1 is, what's our growth plan? Every 90 days, we need to be resetting a growth plan. And everyone who's on the team needs to have very specific focus of, what are we trying to get them to do, like on a week-to-week sprint basis? So that's tied to our 12-month growth goals. That's tied to our 90-day KPIs. We have to have the right technology in place. We have to have workflows, and we keep resetting that 90-day growth plan. So that's just about the alignment part. The second part is the conversion strategy. So how we pull that together from a CRO perspective is we pull from existing customer data. We pull from like previous test results from search, social, email, like, you know, like whatever channels you're using. It's some level of competitive analysis, understanding the customer journey. And then there's a component of the testing part, which is, where do we focus testing and how quickly can we do it? So that's the strategy. So like, as a lead up to launching a CRO program, like, those are the things you need to get done. The rest of this is iterative. It means like, it just keeps like going into perpetuity. So there's the customer research. That's basically the quantitative and qualitative research that goes into getting a better understanding of customers. So like analytics data, channel-based data. We do a lot of qualitative research, like customer interviews and polling and surveying. And those enable marketers to be able to make better decisions, to be able to optimize better, just have a general better understanding of customers. As far as like the roadmap, like what we're doing for clients is, so like, let's say in a 90-day window, we're doing enough research that will produce somewhere between like 75 and 150 data-driven test hypotheses. And again, you can apply that to channels, you can apply it to on-site testing, but that's a lot, right? Like, you can't test that much in any 90-day window. So we're aggregating all that data, we're creating hypotheses. We're not going to get into this today because it's a little bit too tactical, but we have a 10-factor prioritization framework. We basically analyzed 5,000 tests and figured out what are the 10 factors that lead to a higher probability of a winning test. And then the rest of it is like the documentation, right? It's like, here's our roadmap for the next 2 to 3 weeks for testing. We're on a weekly sprint cycle. We have test plans. And then you need the actual skills to do the implementation work. So the iterative testing part is like design, you know, copy, development, setting up test, analyzing data, using that to like iteratively make decisions. So that's basically the process. And we're like repeating that continually with the clients we work with. So I know that's a lot of information to run through very quickly. Carter, do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to like, okay, cool. This is our 4-step research process. So what we do is we start with a heuristic analysis. The way we do this is like, obviously we're on the agency side, but you could do this internally with your team too. So we're pulling different people with different skill sets, different archetypes of people who see things differently. And we're having them basically shred apart our whole funnel. So that's, you know, people who are optimizers, data analysts, developers, product people, designers, copywriters, anybody that we can get in the room at the same time. And it's basically like a workshop. It's like, let's pick this apart. Like, what are the low-hanging fruit opportunities? What doesn't make sense? And it's a really healthy, like, team building exercise to kind of get everybody excited and on the same page. It's also a good opportunity to just isolate 2 specific things. One is, what are the strategic questions we have that we haven't solved for as a team? Like, what are the big business problems? Let's get clear on that. The second thing is like, what research do we need to conduct to get those answers? And then the third thing is like, you can build a backlog of tests that you can run to basically get you started. Then what we're going to do is layer over the top of that the quantitative research. So that's the channel data. That's like whatever your analytics platform is, it's pulling insights out of that. Like, where are people abandoning? Is there variance in the conversion rates based on channel, device type? There's certain things that help us kind of pin down, like, where do we need to focus our efforts? And also, like, are there any segments that over or underperform, versus our benchmark, things like that. The qualitative research, this is the part where I think, from my observations, and I could be wrong about this, but from my observations, digital marketers have tons of quantitative data. We actually have an overwhelming amount of quantitative data, but we rarely have very much qualitative data. And that's the why. Why do they buy? Why do they not buy? What does their journey look like? What are the buying criteria that they have? Is that sophisticated or is it unmapped, right? Like, do they know why they're buying your software? Do they know why they're like submitting a lead to get a demo? Maybe they do, maybe they don't, right? But without that underlying why, it's really hard to make like effective marketing decisions, right? So that usually is the part that is really cool for marketing teams, because they want those answers, but most marketing teams don't have like a specific job description of somebody who's doing qualitative research for them, right? That's just not how teams are structured today, at least. So we're pulling together those different insights, and then we're creating hypotheses. And again, we're prioritizing like testing against those. So this is kind of just lays out like the process and the way that we approach it. And if you're going to do the same thing, we kind of like have the sort of operations for it. And then one of the things Carter and I talked about is talking a little bit about customer journey mapping. There's a lot of misconceptions around what customer journey mapping is and what it actually should be. And I'm also pretty vocal in the industry about some things that I have strong opinions on. So do we want personas, or do we want to focus on optimizing certain customer journey phases? So we look at this like 4-phase approach. Like let's say, I don't want to bash too much on brand personas, but if you have a persona and you have attributes around a customer, and it's like location or like income level or age, if you're not using those explicitly for targeting purposes, then like, what are we really going to test around that? So we don't think about it in terms of like specific attributes or specific personas. We think more about like, what are the touch points and how do we optimize against those effectively to like increase performance in that part of the funnel or the journey. So the way we conceptualize it is we want to simplify. Customer journey mapping is this thing that the perception in the industry is it's crazy expensive and you need really complex tools and you have to spend hundreds of hours. That's not necessary. Like, we literally can use and regularly do use free tools, low level of effort approach to this. What we're trying to get is actionable insights that you can like activate through testing. So the way we think about it is like, make it simple, 4 easy buckets. There's a landing experience. They're coming from some channel, typically, like paid, organic, whatever. They're landing on your site. That's an experience. What's their motivation and intent? There's the on-site experience. Like, are there usability issues? Like, is the user path clunky? Do they know how to get to a solutions page? And is that the right thing for them? Like, do they know how to pick, between different products that you might be offering, et cetera, like all the content, like design aspects. The conversion experience we break out as like a separate bucket, because this is the task they're trying to complete. It's the highest friction part of the journey. Either somebody has to pull out a credit card and buy something, or they have to give you their contact information, or they have to take a proactive step to be like, yeah, have a sales rep call me. So that's a high friction event, right? So we want to analyze that like in a vacuum, essentially. And then there's the customer experience, which is basically anything post conversion, right? They've either purchased or they've become like a free trial user, or like however you identify that in your business. The really interesting thing that we found is from any of these 4 phases of the customer journey, you can pull insights from any of them and apply it to any other part of the journey. So if we do a survey with existing customers and go, what are your favorite features? Well, now we take that voice of customer data from interviewing them, interviewing, polling, survey, whatever it is. And then we can take that and we can tie it back to landing page optimization, or we can tie that back to like what features we're putting on a homepage, or the same thing with like entry pop polling, for example. Somebody lands on your site and you pop a Hotjar poll and it says like, what are you trying to accomplish today? Well, that's like great information from a landing page perspective, because now we can start tying together like intent we see from like a keyword perspective, from like a channel perspective to like how they're landing, we can start tying those pieces together. So anyway, I'll move on to, we'll get back to some of that because I'm sure there's gonna be questions on it. So here's our framework. We want to get the underlying why, right? So what do customers want and why? And it only comes down to three things. It's their mindset, the options that they have in the marketplace, and the experience of them walking through this journey, this buying journey that they have. So from a mindset perspective, it's what's their motivation and what's their intention of what they're trying to accomplish. From an options perspective, it's three things. It's direct competitors, substitute competitors, and the one everybody forgets about is apathy, not taking action. That's the that's the rough one. And then their experience, right, is like those four phases of the journey and how we're optimizing around that from like a channel and on-site perspective. And then I threw this in here. We're not going to like talk through all of this because this is a lot of a lot of stuff to work through. But each of those buckets, we can go and optimize certain things. So we think about it like a toolbox, right? There's like dozens of tools in this toolbox. Which one do we want to focus on? Well, for you, it might be like motivation. We don't understand like what they're trying to accomplish. That'd be valuable information for you to know, right? Or what criteria are they using to make their decision? If we know that, that's automatically going to change ad copy, ad creative, like landing page copy, like even the way that you structure like demos or sales calls and stuff like that. So, and again, you can pull those different data sources and you can apply it to any part of the journey. So, you know, for some businesses, it's like, hey, we get it. We understand why they buy. We're locked in on that. But what we're struggling with is the market positioning. How do we differentiate? You know, I have 7 direct competitors that all also have great products. Why are we different? How are we better? What are the things we can offer that are competitive advantages? You know, sometimes like one of my craziest findings in the last 5 years of really focusing like on the market positioning side of things is saying anything different is a form of competitive advantage, like in this digital age that we're in. It's wild. It's just like everybody's saying the exact same thing. I just did this LinkedIn post where my team, I had all of us sit in a room and look at 150 landing pages, SaaS landing pages. And we just saw the same trends over and over and over and over again, to the point where we're like, here's the 8 things that people are all doing the same. And like, if you do anything different than that, you've like caught their attention, you know, because they're so used to like seeing the same things over and over. So anyway, so you have to kind of map this out and like tailor it to your team and what you're trying to accomplish. But we've boiled it down into these frameworks. So it's like user friendly. It's like easy to approach. It's easy to execute against. It's like low level of effort. Like that's our big thing. It's like, you know, we don't want to overcomplicate this. We want to take action, and we want to take action in a way where we can like drive ROI. So I think that's all I had.